So I'd like to thank the AHVMA Program Committee for having me as a speaker, and I'm actually speaking all day today. In the first 3 hours of this, for the first 3 hours, I'm actually going to be discussing about 5-element medicine. The first hour, I'm going to go ahead and contrast 5-element medicine with the construct, with the 8-principle construct. In the second hour, I'm going to go over the classic needling approach, which I find as an elegant needling approach that if you're a less is more type of acupuncturist, you're going to love it. And then in the third hour of this 3-hour session, I'm going to discuss about the modern adaptations that people are currently using since they abandoned the classic needling technique, and they are using in order to treat from the 5-element construct. And then in the fourth lecture, I'm going to be doing a fun topic on pulmonary edema. And then the last hour, if you guys can stretch it out, it's going to be on seizures. So one of the problems that we have with the talking at this type of venue is that a lot of people have different interests and a lot of people have different levels of expertise. And in this topic, I'm hoping that at least everybody will at least get at least one thing that they can use from each of my lectures that they can use in their clinical practice, or they can, it's like an FYI moment that you have, an epiphany moment that you never even thought about. So when we talk about 5-element, I've already gone through this. My financial disclosure, the only potential financial disclosure I have is that I'm an IVAS basic course instructor. So one of the things I want to say is, in this hour, I'm going to go over a lot of material. So I'd like to hold your questions till the very end. And in all honesty, there probably won't be any time for the questions. So my email is right here. If you have questions regarding 5-element medicine or anything that has to do with the lecture, if you have a case that you're looking at and you don't quite really know which way you want to go, just go ahead and email me. But there is a caveat. You do have to put on the subject line that it's the AHVMA conference, because I will not open it unless I see something about the AHVMA conference or something like that, because I do not want to have some hitchhiker on the email. So we're going to get started. The 8-principle theory actually started about 1,000 to 700 years ago. And this construct, what it does is you get a pattern diagnosis by answering these pairs of questions, whether or not it's inside, whether or not it's outside, whether or not there's hot or cold symptoms, whether or not you have excess or deficiency, and whether or not you have yang or yin, excess or deficiency. So at the end of that, after asking those 4 questions, you have a very, very distinct 8-principle pattern diagnosis, which quantifies qi, yin, yang, blood, and also tells you what element or organ is out of balance. The 5-element construct is a bit more broad. It occurred about 400 to 200 years after the 8-principle, the yin-yang type of theory. And in this, the clinicians, Chinese medicine is one of those that it never is going to stay still. We are changing Chinese medicine as we are right now, so it never stays still. And every generation of acupuncturists wants to one-up the generation ahead of them. And so they will come up with new theories. They will come up with new ways of thinking about it. They'll come up with new ways to treat it. And because of that, this was one of those things. And these people decided that they were going to go ahead and look at nature. That's all they did, was observe nature. And they said that nature is an indication of how and describing disease in an individual. And so everything in the universe is defined into one of these elements or qualities or states. And the elements is what they use now in reference to the modern type of situation. So you're talking about everything from animals, body types, emotions, senses, organs. Everything in nature is in one of those elements. Now, Dr. Worsley is responsible. He's thought to be as the big father of 5-element medicine in the modern world. And what he did was he went off to China, he did his studies with everybody, and then he came back to the Western world, the United States, and he said that in his opinion, the 5-element construct needed to be adapted to the Western society. And then he came up with a situation where he said that in order to define or treat a disease successfully, You had to isolate the element or organ that was the problem child. And if you isolated the organ or the element and you treated that organ or element, everything went back to normal. That was his thought process. Then what happened, though, his students decided to take it one step further. And what his students did is they elected that they said, every one of us is an amalgamation of all of those 5 elements. You cannot function without those 5 elements playing well with each other. And with that in mind, they said, though, that one of these elements is your dominant element. Essentially, they called it your constitutional factor. Other people call it your inherent constitution. And this constitutional factor, what it does is it drives everything within you. It drives your emotional responses, your physical responses. And in that respect, if your constitution is unbalanced, then you will be an unhealthy individual. And so it says then that if you are an earth elemental and you are unbalanced, you are more likely to show the emotion of worry, and you are more likely to have problems with digestive issues or things that involve the stomach and the spleen from the Chinese spectrum. If you are a wood elemental, you are more likely, when you are stressed and unbalanced, to have anger issues. Either you express it too much or you repress it too much, and you are going to be more likely to show problems that involve the wood element, which is liver qi stagnation or blood stagnation. So you're more likely to be the person with the tumors, along with the earth elemental because of damp. So this begs the question, are you who you are because of nature, or is it because of nurture? And the 5-element construct, the 5-element constitutional human practitioners, they've watched through generations and did some studies, and what they found was that the constitutional factor in family lines, no matter whether or not you lived in different family units or in different generations, you had the same constitutional factor a lot of times within that family line. So their opinion is that you are more nature than you are nurture. However, nurture does play a role in it. So if you are a relatively balanced earth elemental, and you might have a smidgen of unbalanced, you put that person in a very positive environment, and then medical diseases, etc., is less likely to show at an early age. You put that unbalanced person into a negative environment, and that person will start to show disease a lot sooner and also succumb to the disease a lot sooner. So what we're going to do now is we are going to compare the 2 theories. And I like this aspect because when you look at it and you compare it, then you can decide which is a better way to use the 8 principle, or is it better to use the 5-element. So the first one, we've already decided, and I already discussed, that the 8 principle diagnosis is a specific diagnosis. So it quantifies qi, it quantifies blood, it quantifies all those things. So now you know exactly what's out of balance in reference to the fundamental substances, and you also know the element or organ that's out of balance. The 5-element is a diagnosis that you base upon the same signs and symptoms that the 8 principle people use. However, you put more importance on the resonances. The resonances define your pattern diagnosis. Now, if you don't have a resonance in front of you, then you use the same signs and symptoms that you would use in the 8 principle practice. The other thing then is that from the cause of disease, in reference to the 8 principal factors, disease, the concept is disease comes from the outside and it causes problems to your body, stress, etc., external pathogenic factors, and then your body becomes unbalanced. So it's an attack on your zhengxi. The 5-element construct, they say disease is coming from within you, that your emotions, your internal factors is what causes you to have chronic recurrent diseases. So it's an internal problem that you have within you. When you talk about medical conditions, with the 8 principle construct, you can use it in any medical condition and you will have good success. It's for local, acute, chronic, joint issues, etc. However, with the 5-element construct, you have a better chance if you use this in those chronic, recurrent diseases. Or you use it, it's better used than the 8 principle when you have a behavioral or emotional problem, because it's going to go into that internal factor type of situation. The focus of the treatment is somewhat different between an 8 principle and the 5-element. The 8 principle, it's the peeling of the onion. You see a problem, you treat it. Oh, there's another problem. You see that problem, you treat it. Oh, there's another problem. So it's a reactive type of approach. The 5-element construct says, let's dig through all this data, and let's find the common denominator that is the cause of the disease in the individual. And if we choose to balance, address, however you want to term that common denominator, then you will be treating the disease. So you are treating the root cause. So it is more preventative than it is more reactive. That's the other thing. So now we're going to do pattern recognition, and this is where it gets sort of fun. As I said, if you do 8 principle, I don't care what approach you use, you always look at the signs, the symptoms, the resonances, and the resonances, they include emotion, color, sound is really an indicator of the emotion, and then odor. They go around and sniff people. And I know that some of you do have a good sense of smell because you can smell in some of those diabetic patients or those you can smell that ketonic smell. Those are just sort of some clues. But the 2 in red are the dominant resonances. They actually determine the pattern diagnosis from the 5-element perspective. Emotion is number 1. Color is number 2. So I'm going to diverge a little bit right now, and when I'm diverging here is that when you're a first, whether or not you practice 8 principle or whether or not you practice 5-element, when you're a novice to starting out, a lot of times you'll see a structural abnormality. You'll see a missing kidney. You want to say immediately that the water element is the problem. You see a hepatic shunt. You want to say immediately that the wood element is out of whack. And this situation, or you see a tachycardia or arrhythmia, and you want to automatically say that the heart is the root cause of the problem. And I will tell you, you cannot do that. You need to have further proof than just one structural abnormality. So in the 5-element, you need the resonance or the color, or you need a plethora of signs and symptoms that support that assumption that you just made based upon that structural problem. The other thing is behavioral issues. We all know that the tongue is associated with the heart because of communication. We all know that the tip of the tongue is specific for the heart. And we all know that the heart houses the shen, that the shen is the overseer of all the emotions. What we have then is whenever we have a behavioral issue, and we see that red tip on the tongue, we automatically want to jump on the bandwagon and say that the heart is the root of the issue. It is not. If you have emotional stress to such the point that you are not balanced, it is always going to affect your heart. Your heart is as a bystander. You need to have resonances and other symptoms that support that the heart is truly the root cause and not just being affected by the behavioral situation that's going on. So the next thing that we're going to discuss is color. In humans, color is looked upon on the face. And the color is looked around the eyes. It's specifically on the lateral aspect of the eyes, and then underneath the eyes. The mouth, it's specifically the color around the laugh lines around the mouth, and then the face, the entire face. So the face is essentially the root problem. You're going to be pretty sure that that's probably what's going on. and then the eyes, and then the mouth. There is a hierarchy. So if you have a color on the face, it overrides the color on the eyes, and that overrides the color on the mouth. And so in human medicine, when you see yellow underneath the eyes, yellow is associated with earth, green is associated with the mouth, with the wood. So in this diagnosis, the actual problem is earth insulting wood, because the color, the eyes override the mouth. And so you have to remember this in reference to what is more important on the hierarchical scale. So now, another example. You see a green face, that's wood. But you see yellow around the eyes, so that's earth. So the primary problem on this individual is wood over controlling earth. So that's how the humans use it. And now we're going to go ahead and put a little clicker in there. This is a glitch. So color takes precedence over symptoms. So you have an individual, hypochondriac pain. Everybody's going to go wood, liver. You have gallstones. Everybody's going to say wood, liver. But you have a yellow color on the face. Color overrides symptoms. So the real diagnosis, the real problem child in this individual is that the earth is the problem, but it's manifesting as simple as symptoms associated with the wood. So if you were to treat the wood problem, the wood symptoms, you're not going to have long-lasting results because the root cause is earth. And so humans, they have a little bit of a better thing because they can see the color. Another example, tiredness, that's spleen qi deficiency. Loose stools, the inability to hold, that's spleen qi deficiency. No appetite, again, that's spleen qi deficiency. But you see a green color somewhere on the face. And so that's an indication that the primary problem is where? Wood. Because the green, the color, overrides the symptoms. And so five-element medicine, as long as you remember these little tiny rules, it becomes easier, but you have to remember the rules. So now there's another thing, emotion. So emotion takes precedence over color. So you have an animal, they're snapping. They have the hypochondriac pain, that's wood. Snapping is associated, anger issues is associated with wood. And then you have the gallstones, and then you have the color yellow. Because emotion overrides color, and in this situation, the emotion fits the medical system, the symptoms, so the proper diagnosis on this patient would be wood over controlling earth, because the emotion overrides that color. And now, another glitch. Constitution overrides it all. So you have an individual, they're snapping, they have all of these symptoms. But when you talk to the owner tells you that the dog is really an easygoing dog. And only recently has the dog started snapping at everybody. So because constitution overrides the symptoms and the color and the emotion, the diagnosis of this dog goes back to we have an unbalanced earth constitution, and that's why the wood symptoms are showing up in the patient. But let's do it a different way. After you're talking to the client says, this dog has always been a land shark, always biting everybody, no matter what. So now the individual, the constitution, a land shark is associated with wood, so then the diagnosis is wood over controlling earth. So the problem that we have is that in our patients, our ability to even recognize color eludes us. We really can't see it on our furred babies and our furred animals. So we actually have to rely on the emotional responses and the behavioral responses of our patients to give us an indication of the emotion and the element that's out of balance. And so that leads us sometimes to make some bad mistakes, because it's also, we're assuming what the owner is telling us, and so we have our own assumptions of what the emotion is. So we are somewhat behind the 8 ball, as they speak. One of the things that is consistent, however, it is a consistent emotional response that's the most reliable indicator of the patient's constitution or the element that's out of balance whenever it's unbalanced. And it's not what you do when you're in a happy place. It's not what your emotion is actually showing in a happy place. What you need to do is look past that happy place and look at the individual, what emotions, what is the behavior when they are unhappy, when they are placed in an environment that does not fit well with them. So now what we're going to do is we are going to discuss the personalities that fit the 5 elements, and I'm going to give you some clues about behavioral things to look at. And one of the things I need to tell you is that if you read up on 5-element medicine, there is a yang aspect to your personality, and then there's a yin aspect to your personality. Within the yang, there's a yang deficient, and there's a yang excess. And then there's the other half. You have a yin deficient and a yin excess. So the spectrum of the personalities can go from the very, very hyper to the very, very unhyper. And in humans, they actually have different nuances of treatment within it. But we can only really see, in all honesty, the majority of us really only see the yang on a regular basis more than we do the yin. And so we have to live with generalities. We just don't have the ability to do the verbal communication that they do in the human world. So the first one is the wood. The wood element, and the great news about this is you can find out how you are and who you are by, and then you can deal with your own problems knowing which one you are. With the wood people are considered to be the pioneers. These are people and dogs that are always involved with action. And we are talking mental action and physical action. They are always moving or thinking. The thing about it is what's driving them in their moving and thinking is a goal or a challenge. They have created a goal in their mind, a challenge in their mind, and they are moving forward. One of the things that is very true with these wood elementals also, they are the curious, the innovative, the inventors. They are the ones that look up to the moon and said, we as humans will fly to the moon. They are the ones that decided that they're going to get into that little wagon, they're going to go past the hostels, they're going to pass the drought, and they're going to go get their piece of land and their gold when they wanted to go west. They didn't care. They had that challenge. They push boundaries and they push rules. That's what makes them creative and innovative. They're the ones that want to right some wrong. They're the ones that want to make the box bigger or the box better. These individuals, they fit well in leadership positions. They also fit well in positions where there's a hierarchy. However, if you happen to work with a wood associate and you don't carry your load, you are gently or forcefully put aside, because you are interfering with the goal or you're interfering with the challenge. And so that is one of the things. They do not. They'll listen to you, but if you're not considered to be efficient. So that's why those wood elemental pets, they just override their owners. And as long as because, Mom, she doesn't know what the heck she's doing. And so these individuals are also not socially driven. They do well within a social group. They can leave it or they can take it. They just don't. Social communication is not important to them. So the emotion that resides with the wood, that resonates with the wood, is anger. And anger always has this negative connotation. You should never get angry in public. You should always control your temper, the polite society. But in actuality, anger and frustration is what drives you forward to change things, make a right wrong, to make the box bigger. Anger is what forces you and motivates you to do something going forward. In our patients, we create anger situations and frustration situations, our patients. And what do? We confine their mental or physical activity. We don't give them a lot of things to do. You know, they can't think, the smart ones, or we don't exercise them enough. So we confine their activities, their physical, and that develops some anger and frustration, especially in the very, very, very wood excess. Or you will tease them with something. You tease them with prey or toys, and you always put it in front of them, but you never give it to them. And so a perfect example is the worst thing you can do to a wood elemental cat is to put a bird feeder outside the window and have this cat see those birds every single day. And it's a wood elemental, and it wants to eat the birds, it wants to hunt the birds, and you have just put them, and they're like, you hear them chirping, you hear them doing that, and some of them are really bad. They'll go after their pack mate because they can't go after the bird. So that's the worst thing. Or you tease a dog with a toy, and they're a wood elemental. You gotta give them the toy, or you're gonna have some frustration going on. Another one is territory incursion. We see this all the time. It's displaced aggression. You see the two dogs run into the door, and they're barking, barking, barking. Somebody rings the doorbell, barking, barking, and the next thing you know, one fur ball is attacking the other fur ball. And the reason for that is I can't get at the person on the other side. I need to protect the house. Well, I can't do that. Let's go after this one. And that's what we get with that anger and frustration. So that's how we can start problems within our situation. So with this then, a lot of times it's very easy for us to see the yang excess. That one's easy. It's the yin personalities that we don't actually see. And these are the individuals, a lot of times they act submissive or they're sort of kind of chill, but they are passive. In humans, they're the passive-aggressive individuals. They're the people that go around behind your back and do that little aggression. A lot of times in these individuals, they come off as fear biters. So we always want to put them into the water category. And what's happened is you've pushed their boundaries and you've pushed them and you've pushed them, and then they lash out. And they look like they're lashing out of fear, but they're actually lashing out because they finally have to do something about it, and then they get angry and lash out. So the next one that we're going to talk about is the fire. Now the fire elemental is the one, Mona. Perfect example of a fire elemental. And they are high energy. They are charismatic. They are empathetic. A bad fire elemental. When you are a really good fire elemental, you can read a person, and then you know what buttons to push on them. So then you can push their buttons to get them to do what you want them to do. And that's the fire in you. Every one of us has that little bit of fire in us that we know how to read somebody. These are those dramatic. Fire elementals are the most social of the elements. They are up at the top. And they're social because of various different reasons. It's not essentially they want to be the leader, but they do see that the leader gets most of the attention. It's a social. They really gain a lot of warmth, a lot of balance by interacting with everyone and everybody feeding their energy. And that's essentially what a fire elemental likes. They get to get that energy toward them. And so this leads us to their emotion. Joy is the emotion that's associated with the fire elemental. It is not happiness. It is happiness plus, 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 plus. It is up here happiness. And one of the things, even no matter how balanced the fire elemental is, they always like to be stimulated. So you stimulate them, reaches another level. They really aren't happy until they're stimulated again. So it's a constant stimulation type of thing. And one of the bad things is the fire elemental has to learn not to be stimulated and seek that stimulation. They want that stimulation. They want that social activity. And so it goes up and up and up and up, and finally, whonk. They have the highs and lows, and that's why we see that a lot in the people. The worst thing a fire elemental dog or cat can be is owned by another fire elemental. They feed each other. The second worst is a fire elemental owned by a earth elemental. The earth elemental enables the fire elemental. And because they want to nurture, they're sitting there nurturing, and they're just making that fire elemental even worse. So if you recognize you have a earth client, and you see the little guy just, you need to have some discussions with that client from the very beginning on how to tamp that thing down, or that thing's going to start, becoming the king. And fire elementals are capable of being snappers. So you have a fire elemental that's out of control and then starts to snap because he's not getting all the attention that he wants to get. So in all other words, we actually see that aspect a lot more. But the problem is we hardly ever get to see this aspect, and we don't recognize this aspect. We don't recognize the very chill fire elemental. And I know I put them really down, but there's some very chill fire elementals. The way you can tell if you have a potential fire elemental that's just a bit chill, take that pet, put them in a situation that resonates with them, and all of a sudden, they're up here. Take them away from that environment that resonates with them, and then they drop down. So that's a way to find out if you have a repressed, or should we say, a deficient fire elemental. The next person that we have is the earth people. And we all know about the earth people. These are the peacemakers. They are the nurturing, the caring, the easygoing. They are the second most social of the group. And they are social because for them, harmony and stability is their anchor in their world. And getting everybody to work with each other and everybody to be kumbaya with each other, that's the earth elemental. That's their goal, is to have stability within their group. The one thing that happens, though, is that the emotion, worry, is associated with the earth elemental. And worry is overthinking about the little things. Always the little things. You don't get the big picture. You're always thinking about too many little things. And then you get this unbalanced earth elemental. He's worried. You get it with the need to nourish, because that's innate to them. And you get it where you have this need to have stability within their environment. And then what happens is the unbalanced earth elemental starts to become obsessed, vigilant over an object, a person, or an animal. Because that object, that person, that animal has become their anchor to their world. You take away that object, that person, that anchor, and all of a sudden you have situations that we say separation anxiety, destructiveness. You have all of those things happening because that anchor is no longer there. They can also become very overprotective about whatever they have, and because they get overprotective and you try to take it away from them, etc., they can become aggressive. And then that puts them into, some people will erroneously put them into a wood element because they got aggressive over whatever they wanted or whatever the focus of their center of life is. And the other aspect then is that they also then, what happens is they can go the other direction, where you take away their focus and the person or whatever, and now they just lack life. They're just, boom. They don't want to move. And you see that sometimes where the dog is staring, he's sitting at the door until the owner comes. He doesn't want to play with anybody. He doesn't want to do anything. And then when their favorite person comes, all of a sudden they're just back to normal again. And so it's that type. That's the more deficient aspect of the earth elemental. The fourth is the metal elemental. And the metal elemental is considered to be the judges. And these individuals, they are the independent, very professional looking individuals. They are friendly but aloof. The metal elementals are the least social of the 5 elements because they are aloof within their pack and they are aloof outside of their pack. So they really, social is not, and they're aloof with everybody, not just the family, but also not just strangers, the family. These individuals, they are very private individuals. They don't share their inner thoughts, even sometimes with their best friends. They won't share their thoughts. A lot of times the best friends won't know anything about what they're thinking. These are the people then, and they are metal elementals. They have this situation where they are goal and task oriented, just like the wood elemental. And they're different from the wood elemental in that they will adhere to the rules and protocols that are put in front of them. So when they have a goal or a challenge, and there are rules in the company or rules, even though the rules impede the success of the goal or the challenge, they will keep on listening to the rules. And this causes a lot of stress to the metal elementals because they can't, it takes them a lot to get past that rule, that protocol. They are very methodical in their approach. Now, a wood personality, they tend to sort of dive 2 feet in to get their goal. They're a little bit more chaotic in their thinking process, but I have the goal in mind. But the metal elemental is, we have this goal and we're gonna do it this way. We're gonna, follow the yellow brick road, that type of situation. And that is all due to the way the Po, that is the spirit that resides in the lungs. Now the Po is that spirit, just as your lungs disperse the Wei Qi to protect your body from external factors, the Po is what protects you from mental and physical onslaught. The Po is what protects you and gives you that self-esteem when somebody is criticizing you a lot. So if you have a good amount of Po and your metal is strong, you're going to withstand that criticism. You're not going to, you're not going to cave. You're not going to feel like you're not worthy, etc. That's the Po that keeps that. The Po is also that part of you that gives you your agility and your coordination. It connects your mind with your body. So if you have a lot of strong Po within you, that's the ballet people, that they are very coordinated and everything, and that type of situation. Tai Chi is one of the things that you can use to develop your Po, to develop your mind with your body. So it's all about this idea of perfection. And so that's part of the reason why a lot of the individuals, they become obsessive and compulsive because they want everything to be perfect in their world. And one of the things that's an anomaly with a metal elemental, a wood elemental, as long as they feel they personally met their goal or they personally met their challenge, they are happy. I made my 5 minute, I did my 22 laps in 30 minutes. Woohoo! I don't care that anybody can do it 22 laps in 5 minutes. I did mine. But I don't need somebody else to tell me I did something good. The metal elemental, the metal is the part of you that wants somebody to tell you did a job well done. So when you have a metal individual, you'll know them. You had them in school. They come up and they go, what'd you get on that test? And you tell them, well, I got a B. And they said, well, I got a B+. They're the kind that want to tell you. That's the metal in you that says, I got one better. And so that is the part of you, you want the recognition. So if you have a metal elemental pet, you need to recognize them. I don't know, if you've ever seen pets, you know the wood elemental pets. Do you ever really, do they really need you to tell them that they're a good boy? They're like, on you, I did it. But the border collie, did I do good? Did I do good? And that's the mental thing that you see. So if you have a metal elemental, you need to give them. Even if it's that was a good boy type of thing. The worst thing for a metal elemental is to be owned by a wood elemental or another metal, unbalanced metal elemental, because we don't have the nurturing thing. So we don't nurture these pets very well. An earth parent to a metal elemental is probably a good one, because they're always telling them that the dog did well done. One of the things that happens with the metal elemental is, just like the description that you learned when you were taking the IVAS course, fall is the time of the year that's associated with metal. Everything is withdrawing. The leaves and the plants are withdrawing their energy into them so that they're storing up for wintertime. The birds are migrating, they're withdrawing, they're getting out of the environment. The bear is starting to hibernate, they're withdrawing from the environment. So the same thing happens with the metal elemental. What happens when they are stressed, when they are placed in a confrontational situation, because they don't show their emotions, because they're professional, they just withdraw. They just withdraw from the area. And so, you know, the worst thing you can have is a metal person with a wood. The wood is they're arguing, they're screaming, and the metal person is walking away. And so that just makes them, what do you mean you're walking away? You can't walk away from me in that type of situation. And the withdrawing is the part of the metal. And so with that, however, these individuals, sometimes when unbalanced, they withdraw too much. They withdraw away. And so a lot of times, a lot of these metal elemental dogs, they'll just be really loners outside of the pack, even more so than normal. But the emotion that resides most with the metal elemental is grief. And grief is necessary. We always equate grief with losing a loved one. But in actuality, grief is that feeling that you lose whenever you break a bond. Whenever you're metal, you go through life, you create bonds, you break bonds. You create bonds, you break bonds. If you are balanced, you create, you get into new concepts, you get new friends, you get new environments. You learn from that. You go, oh, that wasn't so good of an idea, let's drop it and let's get another idea. So the grief is that feeling. And what happens then is if the metal is unbalanced, you either cannot make bonds or you can't break bonds. It's one of those two. The other thing is, when you get, this is when it gets in trouble, you have that need to be perfect, you have that need to have order in methodical situation, and then you have the inability to let go. And so these are those obsessive compulsive behaviors that you see in our pets, and that's what's driving them. So the last one that we have is the water elemental. And the water elemental is the philosopher of the group. These individuals, one thing is they are the next, they're remember how I said the metal was the least social of the group? The water elementals are social within their pack, but asocial outside of their pack. Their total personality is different within their pack, within your family unit. But away from your pack, you are a watcher. You don't engage away from the pack. These individuals, they're intelligent, they're thinkers, they're investigative. They're the philosophers. But just like the wood, however, in their approach of thinking and doing all of this stuff, they are very cautious in how they do it. The wood elemental, the other creators, they just go, I'm going to do it. Jump over the cliff. While the water elemental, he takes a more cautious, or she takes a more cautious approach. And this is because it's associated with the Ji. The Ji resides within the kidneys. It is the one that is responsible for your survival instinct. It is the one that keeps you alive and keeps you from, dangerous situation. And because it's so strong in the water elemental, that's why they're very cautious individuals. But the Ji is also that view that keeps you going and motivating. No matter what's put in your way, it gives you the will to continue. And so that's why these individuals are also the most stubborn and the most strong-willed. And because they are asocial, they are willing to sit in the background and they are willing to just watch, do their thing, create or whatever, and let somebody else take all the glory. Fear is the emotion that resides with the water elemental. And fear, it fits. You need to have fear because it tells you when you are in a dangerous situation, and it alerts you that something's going to hurt you. It warns you of danger. When you are an unbalanced water elemental, you can either, and we see this, you don't see any fear, you don't see any danger at all, evil Knievel, or you see danger every place you look. Those are the two spectrums that you have. And the other thing is, you may see the danger, but you lack the skills to deal with the danger. You may see the danger and lack that skill to deal with it. So in our patients, how can you determine fear versus anger? You see that snappy, hissing, lunging type of dog, it's doing all of that, it's snapping, hissing. How can you tell if it's fear or if it's anger? It's by posture. So if you look at this little guy right here, you can tell he's hunkered down, he's trying to look as small as possible, he's trying to protect his innards, his ears are back and down, and they have furtive eye contact. They don't look directly at the source of confrontation. Now, you look at this little land shark. He is puffing up as big as he can. He is moving forward. He is looking directly at the person he is upset about. His ears are back, but they're up, and he is going for her. And that's one of the ways you can tell. It's the posture of the individual. The other way you can tell is my classic. You have the cat that's in the back of the cage, and it's hissing and it's spitting when you open the door. The cat that lunges out, bites you, and takes off running, that's fear. The cat that bites you and is still biting, that's anger. So that's an indication that you can tell what's going on in reference to that individual. So the last thing is, we are all an amalgamation of every one of these elements. And I am a wood elemental. I have a lot of metal in me. And the reason I know I'm a wood elemental is because when faced with confrontation, I am always going forward. Anger is my go-to emotion, no matter what. But I know I have a lot of metal in me because I like to put boxes within boxes within boxes. And so whenever I'm doing a lecture, I'm tweaking it constantly. That's that perfection part of me. I come across in lectures as a fire elemental because I look really dramatic and all that kind of stuff. And the only reason that happens, and the only time that happens, is when I'm teaching. You take this person into a tete-a-tete, like a coffee thing where people, or one of those parties you always have to go because friends are having a party. I don't do small conversation. I don't know how to do small conversation. If it's work, I can do that all the time. But if it's anything that has to do, how's the weather, how's whatever, I don't know how to do that. So I know, and that's one of the great things about knowing yourself, is that you can know what's good and what's bad, and you don't have to feel bad about yourself. And the other thing is, it is not what you say, it's what you do. And in reality, it's not what you do when you're in a happy place. It's what you do when you are in a stressful situation that is most likely going to tell you what you are. And that is one of the things that I try to do. Whenever I have my patients and we're talking about their dog and or their cat, and I'm trying to get a constitution idea of what's going on, I always ask them, even though they tick off on my intake form, they also tick off all the things that they think that the emotions, the behaviors, whatever that goes along with their pet. But I always ask them, what does your pet do when this happens? What does your pet do when this happens? And that gives me a better idea what that pet does when he is or she is stressed. And so this ends this first lecture. And now that I'm retired, my husband and I, we bought this little 17-foot glorified tent. And we go, and our goal is to go to all the national parks in the US. But I've pretty much put that down a little because there's some places I really don't want to go. But did you know there's national parks in Samoa? And there's other places that you can, you know, so I might have to do overseas traveling to go to these national parks. So this ends it. It's 49 minutes. I told you it was going to go right to the wire. And like I said, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and email me. Next session, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and go over the classic needling approach, which I really would think that you guys are going to like because it's easy. It really is easy once you get past, you know, since you guys are now past, you know, I don't have to memorize everything from that TCM course when you were introduced to it when you had the basic course. So that's it.